Hey you! Thanks for stopping by! Today I have another disturbing manga review, and it is Feeding Lamb by Masumi Nishin. I hope I said that correctly. Published in 2013 and only 2 volumes, so this was a quick read. I picked this series because it feels like all my disturbing manga reviews have been the same. A girl gets assaulted and tortured, everyone else is terrible, and nobody gets punished. I want something different. I learned about this manga while searching through Reddit, and someone recommended this as a disturbing manga. It wasn't on the disturbing manga iceberg, so I got curious. Let me read you the synopsis from myAnimeList. Quote, Brandon saved Andy's life when they were children, but this heroic act caused him to get epilepsy. After Brandon's family received all the compensation fees they could get out of the tragic accident, his mother and sister moved away, leaving Brandon with his father, who eloped with a co-worker soon after. 10 years later, Brandon has found himself stuck with his only friend, Andy, who has been taking care of him, letting him indulge in his drinking problem and satisfying his sexual needs, unquote. How messed up is this manga? Let's find out. The manga opens with a man on the floor, gagged, tied up, and getting beaten. His gag is removed. He is essayed by another man. Then right after, his manhood is cut off. In the next panel, we are introduced to our main characters, Andy and Brandon. They get into an argument when Brandon collapses. Andy takes him home. Back home, Andy is licking Brand's popsicle. They get into another argument. From the beginning, it's clear their relationship is toxic. Brandon reminds him that he got his scars on his face from saving him. In a flashback, we learn how he got those scars. Andy was tied up on the train tracks until Brandon saved him. I know kids can be mean, but this is taking it to another level. In the present, Andy gets home and opens the fridge, where it's revealed that's where he stores the body parts. Later, while Andy is on his lunch break at the hospital, he catches Brandon getting test pills from a sketchy salesman. Andy later returns to talk to the salesman, saying the reason the medicine doesn't work for his partner is because he's an alcoholic. The salesman says he learned a lot about Andy from talking to Brandon. The real reason he won't get better is because Andy supplies him with alcohol. He's got a lot of nerve saying that to his face. This would be his biggest mistake. 5 hours later, Andy returns home and pulls the salesman out of the trunk. He tortures the salesman by pulling out his teeth and forcing him to lick his popsicle. Just then, Brandon calls asking if he could fix his computer. Andy puts the salesman to sleep and then ties him to the bed. The next page is the two getting intimate. In another flashback, we see the two after the train accident. Brandon's face is disfigured, so his family got compensation from the people involved. Young Andy goes to visit Brandon at his house to find him convulsing on the floor after hitting his head on the table. His family see this but don't do anything. It only got worse. His parents got divorced, his mother and sister left taking the compensation money, then his father ran off with another woman, leaving Brandon alone. To support himself, he begins selling illegal drugs to a guy named Igor. Andy eventually discovers the truth. Andy then says, "Tell me next time and don't do anything dangerous. I'm your friend." Brandon kicks him and responds, "Do friends give you money and suck you off?" Andy smashes a beer bottle over his head, calling him lower than trash. Later, Andy meets Igor in a parking lot. While his back is turned, Andy hits him over the head with a brick. He takes him to a secluded area to finish the job. Andy destroys Igor's phone, then slits his throat. Andy continues working at the hospital and is loved by his co-workers. They pity him when Brandon calls, asking him to come over. Everyone thinks Andy is this sweet nurse getting taken advantage of. When Andy arrives, Brandon throws him on the couch, and it looks like they are about to make love when he notices 2 men in the corner. It turns out this was all a bet. Brandon told his friends he was being taken care of by a sexy nurse, and his friends wanted to see, thinking the nurse was a woman. He made a bet that he could get his nurse to come over. The guys leave while Brandon demands they pay him. Andy tries to refrain himself from putting his hands on him. Andy has murder on his mind. He attacks the 2 men outside. One guy tries to get away by headbutting Andy in the face, but it's pointless. Andy attacks him from behind, then assaults and decapitates him. The chapter ends with the police finding Igor's body. They find fingerprints at the crime scene that belong to Brandon, who is now their main suspect. The next chapter opens with Brandon getting touchy with Andy. They get into another argument over rent. Brandon goes home where the police are waiting. He runs but gets tackled to the ground. He gets questioned about Igor's murder. A detective named Hayden informs the officer that Brandon has epilepsy. Brandon recognizes Hayden as they were childhood friends. In another flashback, we learned Andy used to torture small animals, freaking out the kids. No, not the squirrel! At a young age, he showed signs of being a serial killer. Hayden had a dog that went missing. Andy found his dog dead. And while it's not shown, it's implied that Andy was responsible. That's what led the kids to tying Andy to the train tracks. In the present, Brandon thinks Hayden is implying that he should have let Andy die that day. He informs the detective that if he hadn't saved Andy, he would have been a murderer. Andy pays Brandon's bail. Brandon goes to his part-time job only to find out he was fired for missing so many days. While walking home, he gets abducted at gunpoint by some men who were friends of Igor. He insists he had nothing to do with his death, then begins having a seizure. The men kick him out of the car. He's later discovered by Andy. Brandon goes back to drinking and watching TV when Andy gives him a slobbery kiss to tell if Brand took his pills. Andy then gives him a BJ. Brandon wakes up to discover Andy gone, and just then the police show up, trying to find evidence. We learned it was Andy's co-worker who called the police because they were worried about him. That night, Hayden takes Brandon out to dinner. Brandon opens up about his parents taking the compensation money and having no money to get a surgery that would help with his seizures. Hayden gets a call and tells Brandon that he is now a suspect in the disappearance of 2 other men who were last seen at his apartment. Brandon angrily leaves, saying he doesn't remember anything. Back at the house, Andy injects Brandon in the arm, rendering him unconscious. Funny side note, the police do these funny sketches of how they think Brandon murdered those guys. Brandon wakes up wearing no clothes, tied to a bed. Andy proceeds to beat and essay him while filming the whole thing. It gets worse. Next, Andy inserts nails into his fingers and shows him footage of him torturing his past victims, including the salesman. Brandon's disappearance makes the news. Andy's co-worker tells him, quote, "You trusted that murderer and paid bail for him. You're too nice," unquote. Later, Andy returns to feed Brandon. Brandon asks for water but gets a beer, which makes him mad. Andy retaliates by shoving the bottle inside him and shoving his face in the toilet. Andy tattoos 12 tally marks on Brand's lower back, which I'm guessing are the number of days he's been held captive. Brandon pleads for Andy to let him go. He says he'll tell the police he committed all the murders and forced Andy to help, but it doesn't work. Hayden meets with Andy outside Andy's house. Hayden suspects Andy is hiding Brandon, since he paid his bail, and is suspicious as to why he's cooking food for more than one person. In the next page, Brandon wakes up, tied to the bed, to see Hayden has also been taken hostage. Andy says, "I want to do to you what I did to your dog." He cuts off Hayden's fingers, pulls out his teeth, assaults him, and cuts off his private parts, while Brandon is forced to watch. Hayden apologizes for not believing him. And oh boy, it gets worse. Hayden is hanging upside down as Andy decapitates him. Brandon is sitting in a bathtub getting sprayed with blood, and Hayden's decapitated head falls on him.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would. But I legally can't.
Later, Andy tries to feed Brandon, but he refuses. He says, quote, "If I didn't save you, nobody would have died, and I would be healthy now," unquote. This enrages Andy, who stabs him in the eye. Brandon cries for his mom. Andy responds, quote, "Mommy, did Mommy look after you? You should be asking me for help," unquote. Andy plans to take Brandon to a village house that belonged to his grandmother. He places him in a bag in the back of his car. Brandon breaks free and attacks Andy from behind, causing the car to crash. Brandon takes Andy's shirt and knife and starts running. He makes it to a bridge until Andy tackles him to the ground. A police officer shows up. Andy says Brandon is crazy, and to an outsider, he does appear to be crazy. The officer shoots Brandon in the leg. Andy walks up behind the officer and snaps his neck. Brandon crawls to the edge of the bridge. Andy grabs onto him, and they both fall. Andy falls right onto the train tracks. Brandon gets up at first, but begins to have a seizure. As Andy watches, he gets hit by the train. A fitting end for the character. He died the way he should have died all those years ago. An ambulance arrives and luckily Brandon survives. A year passes and Brandon doesn't look too good. He looks like a homeless person. He gets bullied by some locals. I'm guessing after Andy's death, he hadn't gotten any better. He needs a crutch to walk. He goes back to Andy's old place to find a fresh plate and a beer. He begins to panic when someone from behind injects him. It's revealed to be Andy, who says he came back to get him and it's okay now. That's how the story ends. When I read this for the first time, I was thinking, how did he survive getting hit by a train or escaping without anyone noticing? Then I thought about the ending. Then I thought maybe the ending isn't supposed to be taken literally. Maybe this was all in Brandon's head. He imagined seeing Andy. It's a metaphor about how Brandon never got over the emotional scars caused by Andy. That Andy still had a hold on him even in death. I could be wrong. As usual, I like to include some reviews of what people thought of this manga. Let's read a few. Disturbing. It is an actual horror psychological manga, not a romance with a few unsettling scenes. The artwork is brilliant and fits the tone of the story. No blushing maidens and stumbling of heart when the two main characters finally hold hands. I am definitely going to check out Nishin's other works. Boring. First time trying this author and I loved it. This is such a great serial killer story. Totally recommended for those who enjoyed this brand of effed up. Tons of gory torture, uncensored dongs, and gays behaving badly. Not perfect, but for what it is, I'll say it was time well spent. If you take all the gore out, the story is just meh. I enjoyed this. Effed up stories hit differently. As for my thoughts on the manga, I felt sorry for Brandon. He tried to do the right thing by saving Andy, but it ended up causing him a lot of trauma. Brandon is a flawed character. He has fits of rage and he breaks the law to make money. This doesn't justify what Andy did to him. Brandon is not a perfect victim. There is no such thing as a perfect victim. He had a terrible upbringing and had no good people in his life to turn to. The only emotional support he had was from a serial killer. Andy wanted to make Brandon dependent on him, and to do that, made sure he never got better by supplying him with alcohol. I wasn't fazed when Andy killed those other guys, but Hayden's death was brutal. He didn't deserve that. The most disturbing part for me was the animals getting tortured, even though it wasn't shown. I guess I'm desensitized to the gore. Animal deaths, though, I find more disturbing. I might check out the mangaka's other works in the future. If you want to check out this manga for yourself, I can't stop you. I'm not your mom. I'm not responsible for your trauma. If you like this video, then consider subscribing, liking, and sharing. What are your thoughts on Feeding Lamb? What's the most disturbing manga you've read? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for stopping by.